Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query. And today we are going to be discussing what's important for hormone balancing. So this is a complex topic when it comes to women, and we are specifically going to address lifestyle factors that are going to go into balanced hormones, right? First and foremost, I think the biggest thing that we need to discuss is going to be digestion. I have been in the industry for 10 years now, and I have specialized in women's health and women's coaching for going on 5 years now. Over the course of the last decade, in dealing with hundreds and hundreds of female clients and starting to understand like what is normal, what's not normal, what's common, but not normal with female clients is, far too many females think that going to the bathroom, specifically bowel movements, once every few days, maybe once every week is completely normal. And the reality is it's become extremely common in our society and culture today, but it is not normal. And the biggest thing that we're going to run into when it comes to not having a daily bowel movement is the re-release of waste products back into the bloodstream, such as estrogen your body is trying to clear. This can wreak havoc on your body in numerous ways. Recirculation of estrogen, especially waste product estrogen, can cause estrogen dominance. And we don't ever want a dominant hormone in the body when it comes to our sex hormones. This can lead to painful periods. This can lead to tender breasts before your periods, heavier PMS symptoms, erratic behavior, more than what would be normal. It's not to say that a menstrual cycle will not have signs, symptoms, some degrees of fatigue, some degrees of increased hunger, but some of what our society and culture today has accepted as normal is not normal. It's just simply common. So with that being said, what can be done? Well, first and foremost, majority of people today are not consuming enough fiber. And what I've found over the last decade in working with women is typically the sweet spot is about 25 to 30 grams of fiber on a daily basis is going to help with regular bowel movements and being able to excrete those waste products that may be causing and wreaking havoc and hormone imbalance in your body. The next biggest, I would say, pillar when it comes to having optimal hormones for a female is going to be stress management. Stress management is going to be a crucial piece of the puzzle of having optimal hormones, because far too often, if a female is in a highly stressed state, and this can be caused by numerous things. This could be caused by chronic dieting, meaning not consuming enough calories for day-to-day bodily function. And I'll tell you a secret, 1,200 calories is not enough. Chronic dieting, unchecked stress from pursuing, a heavily demanding career without it being in check with other things, becoming a new parent or a toxic and stressful relationship can all be pieces in that stress bucket. And I'm not telling you that you need to, live in a bubble, but it's understanding that throughout life, there are going to be seasons. And for example, in your early 20s, when you don't have the financial burdens that you might have in your early 30s, you don't have a spouse or a husband or children. your ability to handle and manage more stress from, say, working out, dieting harder is going to be far more manageable, because you want to think of, when we're talking about stress management, you want to think of a 5-gallon bucket, and you can only manage so much stress, right? And as we age progressively, that stress bucket just naturally gets more full. Typically, adding in a spouse, adding in children, adding in higher pressure in your career and more financial obligations, aging parents. So this is where modulating, your outputs when it comes to training or your dieting, etc., are important to match the season of life that you're in. Because if you push those boundaries too far for too long, oftentimes the first hormone to tank is going to be progesterone. And if your progesterone is tanked, then essentially you've become estrogen dominant, right? Like there's a yin and a yang to estrogen and progesterone. Next up after that, typically we're going to see your testosterone decline. And because your testosterone declines, oftentimes your ability to build muscle, maintain, good body fat and body composition, and continue to get strong in the gym are going to decline. Oftentimes your libido is going to decline, and you're going to run into, these hormone imbalances and issues caused by mismanaged and misappropriated stress that needs to be, we need to change based on the current season of life that we're in. So far, we've covered, kind of digestion, we've covered stress management, and under those umbrellas, like we can kind of dive a little bit deeper and talk about nutrition, right? So we touched on it a little bit already, is under consuming food for the level of output. If you are chronically dieting, it is going to have similar effects from a perspective of it can lower stomach acid. So you're not going to be able to break down and digest your food as easily. This could lead to overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, H. pylori, or candida, leading to even further issues and potentially more hormone imbalances, and the less likelihood you are going to be able to be successful at your body composition goals, because it's going to be very challenging. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is going to make it extremely challenging. So periods of maintenance calories, majority of people need to be spending 75, I would say 85% of their year at minimum at maintenance calories, and dieting for short periods of time with great deal of intent in order to not only have their ideal physique, but also manage potential negative side effects of long-term dieting. The next point I'd like to cover is, how does this change as you get older? Well, realistically, it actually doesn't change as you get older. A recent meta-analysis that was released, I believe in 2020, shows that your metabolism does not slow down until you are well into your 60s. So what does that actually mean? It simply means, as previously discussed earlier on in this episode, as you are no longer a early 20-something-year-old in college with minimal financial responsibility, you're far more active, etc., is simply you don't move as much as you once did. The compiling stress of working a career, oftentimes sitting behind a desk, sitting in the car, waiting for school pickup, picking up and bringing your kids to sports, your activity level has gone way down, and oftentimes your nutritional intake has come up. So when it comes to managing your hormones as you age, it's a lot of the same things that we just discussed, but let's kind of give you some foundational pillars. First and foremost, pillar number one is you need to be eating at maintenance calories And ideally, you're consuming roughly 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of lean body weight in protein. Maintenance calories should be consumed, as previously stated, for roughly 75 to 85% of your year at minimum if you are attempting to make body composition changes and you're trying to lose weight. If you don't know the last time you ate maintenance calories, let's just say you've gone through a period of time, a couple of years, you haven't been tracking your nutrition, and maybe you've slowly gained weight, or maybe you're maintaining the weight, but you're not happy with your body composition. The first thing that I recommend that you do is finding your maintenance calories and staying there for 6 months minimum, tracking your nutrition day in, day out, and working really hard in the gym 2 to 4 days per week to get very, very strong, which is going to give you that toned look that you seek so much. And then once you've done that, is you are ready to step into your first deficit, and you will be far more successful and far more happy with the outcomes if you approach your next diet that way. Your hormones will be more thankful, your digestive system will be more thankful, etc. Pillar number 2 is going to be stress management of some kind. And this is going to look different through different seasons of your life. In your early 20s, stress management can be something as simple as, going for walks, reading a book by yourself. Now, these are pillars that would apply throughout life, but realistically, typically in your early 20s, you're not dealing with as much stress, and it might not need as much thought or mindfulness in that time period of your life. But if you are listening to this and you are in your early 20s, it's good to begin forming mindfulness practices, such as going for a walk without your cell phone, headphones, etc., and just spending time in nature. Reading a favorite book that you are reading for enjoyment, journaling, finding some form of breathwork practice, yoga, or meditation, etc. This is extremely important as you step into your late 20s, your early 30s, depending on, where you're at in your life. As you do get into a more demanding career, have a husband, and have children, it is extremely important that you have stress management things put in place to keep your hormones in check. And it's all of the aforementioned things that I just said: daily walks, making sure to have at least 15 minutes alone per day, having a discussion with your husband and saying, hey, I just need 15 minutes a day to myself to read, to journal, to sit in silence, to pray. And then also making sure that you're prioritizing and making time to move your body in a physical nature and challenging yourself so you can have enough, muscle, because muscle is going to be the fountain of youth. So we've covered pillar number 1, which is going to be your nutrition, eating at maintenance calories. Pillar number 2, stress management. Pillar number 3 is going to be investing in community, surrounding yourself with people that are positive, that have your best interests at heart. And that can be hard in today's world. And so it's something that is extremely important, though, for your mental health and well-being, is to have a solid foundational group of people around you that is going to be crucial for your overall health, well-being, and your hormones. The next topic that I would like to cover is something that we've already touched on a little bit, but I want to make sure we go over, is what does unbalanced hormones look like? Oftentimes, unbalanced hormones can mean irregular periods, meaning they are varying in times between cycles. Now, some of this can be somewhat normal. In some women's cycles can be shorter or longer, but it is important that they are consistent. This can mean things like tender breasts before your menstrual cycle. This can mean massive, mood swings and variance. This can be massive mood swings. This can be severe cramping where, you're living with a heating pad on your tummy for a couple of days and you're living on Midol just to survive. These are all very common, but this is not normal and is a sign that you may be dealing with unbalanced hormones that needs to be addressed. Another thing would be, really, really big weight fluctuations. Now, some weight fluctuations are normal and everybody is different, but this can be a common factor of having some hormones that may not be optimal. Unexplained weight gain, changes in, hunger cueing can, be caused by unbalanced hormones, etc. When should you get tested? When should you get your hormones tested? Depending on your own personal history, there is going to be a lot of factors that go into this question, such as, were you on hormonal birth control? How many years were you on birth control? Are you currently dealing with some of the signs and symptoms that we spoke about, such as irregular menstrual cycles, extremely painful menstrual cycles, tender breasts? This may be a sign, an indication that you should get your hormones checked. Ideally, I would say for most women, it would be a solid decision to begin getting your labs drawn at around the age of 25, at least on a yearly basis, to be checking the full gamut of all of your sex hormones, and your thyroid hormones are a really big one for women. It's not extremely common knowledge, but your thyroid actually plays a massive role in your overall sex hormones and menstrual cycle health. So your thyroid is extremely important as a woman to make sure that you're checking it. What does that actually look like? So let's just walk through, what does that kind of panel look like? First and foremost, you should be having in sex hormones your testosterone, your free testosterone, your estrogen, your progesterone, your sex hormone binding globulin. At minimum, when it comes to your sex hormones, should all be being checked. And arguably, I'd like to see DHEA sulfate being checked as well. And that is going to be a neurosteroid upstream of testosterone. From there, we look at thyroid. In Western medicine, unfortunately, it's far too common. You're only going to get TSH checked. If you're lucky, you may find a provider that checks TSH and T4, but unfortunately, that doesn't tell us the whole picture. When we look at that, TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone that's coming from the pituitary to tell the thyroid to create T4. T4 is inactive thyroid hormone. Now, the next thing from there is going to be T3. That is going to be active thyroid. Active thyroid is primarily converted in the gut and the liver. 90% of it is converted in the gut and in the liver. And that is going to happen there where we're converting T4 into T3. And one of the primary sources that we need is carbohydrates in order to convert T4 into T3. Thyroid hormone is so important for women for multiple factors. It can impact their menstrual cycle. It can impact, essentially, the thyroid is the body's thermostat. And it's also going to play a huge role in your overall metabolism, which will impact your body composition. That would be the bare minimum panel that I would like to see. Obviously, there's additional markers, but we want to see at least your sex hormones. We want to see at least a full thyroid panel. And for women, because of the prevalence of autoimmunity conditions such as Hashimoto's disease, it is an autoimmune condition that is attacking the thyroid. I would argue that women are going to need to test their TPO antibodies and reverse T3. That's a conversation for a different day. The next bullet point that I have covering is how long should I work towards my goals until I've said I've done everything? And I feel as though I have a very interesting perspective on this conversation is I dealt with undiagnosed hypothyroidism for 8 years. And in spite of my condition and being unaware of my condition, I was still able to achieve, different body compositions throughout those 8 years. At one point, I dropped 47 pounds and paid for a professional photo shoot that I looked very good for. I looked ready for, in spite of dealing with a thyroid condition. Throughout that time, I competed in powerlifting meets and did a lot of other things. So even if you have a suboptimal thyroid, it doesn't mean that the work isn't still the work and you're still not going to be able to get results. It's just going to simply make it a lot more challenging and make it not a whole lot of fun. So how long should I work towards my goals without achieving them until I realize, hey, I need to get some help. I need to have my labs drawn, or maybe I need to work with a coach. Realistically, I think somewhere between like 6 to 18 months of hard, dedicated work. But what does that mean? We can kind of bring this full circle back to some of the previous pillars that I mentioned. Is, have you been eating and tracking your nutrition for 6 to 18 months? And if you haven't been, that's right there, pillar number one of, if you don't know what's coming in, you can't manage it. Pillar number two is, are you moving your body daily? Meaning, are you getting a bare minimum of 7,500 to 10,000 steps per day over the last 6 to 18 months? If not, then there is pillar number two that you need to look at, you need to address, and that is going to be a key piece of your journey. Whether your hormones are optimal or not, if you are eating enough food on a daily basis, getting in your daily movement, the next is, have you been strength training 2 to 4 days per week with the intention of getting stronger? That is going to be pillar number 3. Pillar number 4 is going to be, are you getting appropriate amounts of sleep? And pillar number 5 is going to be coming back to that stress management factor. Are you managing your stress? All of these 5 buckets are going to be your 5 primary pillars, whether or not you have a thyroid condition, whether or not you have some imbalanced hormones, etc. These things need to be addressed. They need to be looked at if you are not getting the results that you are seeking. And if in any of those categories, you're like, I could do better, or I'm not doing these things at all, then you need to look there before you look anywhere else, before you blame unbalanced hormones, before you blame your thyroid, before you blame your slowing of your metabolism. Because again, we now know metabolisms do not slow until well into our 60s. How do you find maintenance calories? There's multiple calculators that exist. One of my favorite calculators is from the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Disease. They have a great calculator, and typically that is the calculator that I will use to give me a broad idea of where someone is going to be sitting from a maintenance calorie standpoint, and give me at least the framework of like where I'm going to take this person and roughly where their maintenance calories are going to be sitting at. So that way I can build off of that. From there, once we've established their maintenance calories and I give that to them, I am going to give them their maintenance calories, and they're going to ideally nail that for 2 weeks. Once we have 2 weeks established, we check the data. What was the weight average, of course, the across the couple weeks? Did they gain weight? Did the weight stay the same? Or did they lose weight? And then we know, okay, if they gained weight, you're in a slight caloric surplus and we need to pull back the nutrition a little bit. It's probably exactly that, just a little bit. We don't need to make a massive adjustment. Then rinse, wash, and repeat that cycle. 2 weeks later, we test, okay, weight stayed the same, cool, we found maintenance. If you lost weight, it's the same thing. We may need to increase food slightly. Rinse, wash, and repeat. Check in 2 weeks. Did you gain? Did you lose, etc.? And that is how we can go about finding maintenance calories. Don't overthink this. Don't overcomplicate it. It really is that simple. When is the appropriate time to bulk or cut or maintenance phase? We've talked a little bit about this earlier on in the episode. And something I've become really passionate about the last 6 months is, I would say, if you are a completely natural athlete, meaning you are not taking any sort of performance enhancing drugs, and especially for most women, I don't believe that you ever need to truly go into a bulk. I don't see the benefits truly for a natural female athlete to go into a bulk. I feel like long-term, the potential negative outcomes are just too high. I could almost contradict myself here and say, if it's a very slight bulk, a very slight surplus, possibly I could see it. And you're a really high-performing athlete, like you're an endurance athlete, you're a CrossFitter, or, you're doing a lot of conditioning work to build a really, solid aerobic base while maybe bodybuilding, you may need, quote unquote, a surplus. But for majority of women who just want to look good, naked, who want to feel comfortable in their own skin, comfortable in their clothing, maintenance calories daily is going to be your best bet for achieving the physique that you want, building the lean muscle mass that you want, dropping the body fat that you want, and in the long run, having the physique that you want. Cutting, going back to what I said previously, is, I think for most people, because most people are not tracking their nutrition, that a cut should almost be earned, provided you don't have a substantial amount of weight to lose. And even if you do have a substantial amount of weight to lose, I could argue that you need to find maintenance calories and maybe only subtract 500 calories, because I understand the temptation to slash your calories to 1,500 when before you started tracking your nutrition, realistically, you were averaging 3,000 calories a day. So you've literally just cut your calories in half by 50%. You're making a massive decrease in your day-to-day nutrition. So this is going to cause multiple things. It's going to make sticking to your diet very, very challenging. It's going to make you most likely very moody, tired, lethargic, inability to do your training, probably trouble sleeping, etc. So when is a good time to cut? I would say, depending on where you're at in your journey, if you're say coming from the couch to you're starting to work out, you want to better your health and well-being, I would say 6 months. You need to find your maintenance calories and you need to be there for 6 months. You need to focus on getting stronger, moving your body, getting quality sleep, managing your stress, getting daily sunlight, and strength training. Those are going to be the things that I want you to focus on for the first 6 months. And then following that, then you would be ready for that first dieting phase. And it'll probably be the easiest diet of your life, because once you've found established maintenance calories, you can then go into a deficit knowing, hey, all right, I'm going to pull 250 calories, or I'm going to pull 500 calories. And the weight will just simply start to fall off of you. How would you determine bulk cut calories? Already kind of talked a little bit about this, but it's really, first and foremost, it's finding maintenance calories. What is and I really like to lean on the higher end of maintenance calories because typically maintenance calories is going to be a range. I like to find the highest amount of maintenance calories that you can eat and remain at the same exact weight. So once you found maintenance calories, it's very, very easy. If you were to want to go into a bulk, I would be very conservative. 100 to 250 calorie increase from what is maintenance calories. And I would honestly ride that out for probably a month before I make any major adjustments, especially for the natural athlete. Then from there, same thing, 100 to 250 calories. It's going to be a very slow process. On the other side, cutting, it's simple. You would decrease calories, and I would say this I would be a little bit more aggressive with, probably 250 to 500 calories immediately, depending on where your maintenance calories are at. Use that. And if over the course of the 2 weeks, you lose on average 1 to 2 pounds, then I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to keep it the exact same. There's no reason to excitedly drop calories further if I don't need to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop, like I said, I'm going to drop 250 calories and then check, where's the weight loss at? Okay, I'm at 1 to 2 pounds. Cool. I'm going to go another 2 weeks. 1 to 2 pounds, great. And I'm going to keep milking that until the weight loss slows down to maybe half a pound to 3/4 of a pound. And then I'm going to decrease that deficit a little bit further. But I want you to diet on as much calories as we can until we get the desired outcome. From there, you would then increase calories and find your new maintenance calories to come out of that diet. The biggest thing that I see in dieting culture today is a lot of times there's no exit strategy. There's no strategy to come out the other side of a deficit. It's like, now what? And people typically just go right back to the habits and behaviors that got them to that place that they were in the first place. You need to have some form of exit strategy. And with that being said, I'm going to wrap this episode up of the importance of balancing your hormones, so to speak, and what goes into it. What goes into balancing hormones for a woman is, and really any human being, is extremely basic. Now, are there potential interventions that need to happen? Possibly. There's a lot of context to be had. But at its core, it comes down to the pillars that we spoke about throughout this episode that are going to make the most impact. And some signs and symptoms that maybe you do have hormones that are off is if you're not having daily bowel movements, if you are having painful menstrual cycles, extremely tender breasts, extremely heavy flows, your cycle is erratic, or maybe you've missed a cycle. These are all signs and symptoms. These are whispers that your body is telling you, hey, something is not right, and it may be time for you to get labs. I hope this episode brought you value. If it did, please drop a like, subscribe, share with a friend, share it to your Instagram stories. It would mean the absolute world to me.